To ask questions is not to find an answer, but to discover.
During the past 4 decades, the talks and writings of Krishnamurti have stimulated and profoundly challenged audiences in Asia, Europe, and America. During a series of public talks given in the Ojai Valley in California, Krishnamurti, for the first time, permitted the presence of film cameras. This series of 8 programs is the result. As always, Krishnamurti addresses himself to questions which most directly affect our lives. The subject of this, the 5th program in the series, is What is Love?
Becomes naturally expectant, awaiting, and therefore not clear, decisive, and capable of discovery. And when one asks questions, one has to also to find out why one asks it. I feel one should ask questions about everything. But it matters very much why one is asking those questions. What's the background? What is the state of the mind that is asking those questions? Is it awaiting an answer or expecting to be told? If it is waiting for an answer, who is going to answer it? And a mind that's waiting to find the answer is not an active mind. It's just waiting, expecting. I think then, when we do put a question, it becomes very important. Then such questions have a catalytic effect. That such questions do produce an answer in themselves. So, let's proceed and find out what questions we're asking. We know what aggression is. We know what violence is, jealousy, and all the rest of it, which is again a form of energy, an expression of energy. And we must also find out, mustn't we, what love is. Now, how does one find out? Not if the energies are similar, but what love is. Is love pleasure, desire? Are you waiting for me to answer it? So how does one find out? Or is love an energy of in a different field altogether? Of a different quality, a different dimension. And how does one find out what love is? Not intellectually, not argumentatively, not splitting it up, saying divine, physical, and all the rest of it. How does one find out the nature of that thing? Will the conscious mind find it out? The conscious mind being the educated, sophisticated, the mind that has so many experiences, memories, stored up resentments, hatreds. Huh?
Love is a surplus when your own problems have been solved.
Love is a surplus when one's own problems are solved. We are trying to find that out, sir. Please, don't let us speculate what love is. That becomes childish. How does the mind come upon that thing without conscious effort? If I make a conscious effort to find it out, then my conscious effort must have a recognition of what it is. I must have already known it. I must already smelt it, tasted it, known the quality of it. And if I know it, it's merely a memory. And this memory which is of time, and has that memory and time anything to do with affection, love? So, how does one find it out, come upon it? You understand am I making myself clear? The question. It's like inquiring into if there is such thing as God. I put it in quotes. That word God is so heavily loaded that has almost lost all its meaning. If one wants to discover it, if there is or if there is not, how does one proceed? Obviously, to find out, all types of belief must come to an end. And that which means all form of fear must come to an end. Surely. No? Belief is a form of hope. And I have hope because I'm in despair. And I invent a belief, a security, a state of mind which says there is something which is permanent. And I believe in that. And that belief, obviously, not only conditions all examination, all perception, but it prevents the total inaction. Well, I'll better wait. I must not only be free of every form of belief, and therefore fear, and also my mind must be so sharp, so sensitive. The sensitivity brought about by right eating and, behavior and physical condition and all that. And then only there is a possibility of discovering something. So it seems to me in the same way to find out or come upon this thing called love, which is so heavily loaded, one must inquire into this question of pleasure and desire. You know, we're not trying to suppress desire. The monks throughout the world have tried that. And those so-called religious people have attempted to control desire because some authority, a religious authority, has said, be free of desire. Because desire leads to the bondage. So, so-called spiritual people, whatever that word may mean, those people have tried to either to suppress, eliminate, or sublimate it by identifying themselves with a greater desire. But it's still within the pattern, within the area of desire. And what's wrong with a desire? I see something nice, pleasant, striking. By the very looking of it, there is a sensation, there is desire out of that. Isn't that so? Please, this is not a talk, we must... And thought comes and gives that desires a continuity and vitality, and from that there is this seeking of pleasure. I think this is fairly simple, isn't it? The verbal explanation, but the explanation is not the fact, it's not what you discover. If you discovered it, it'll become tremendously vital. If I discover how thought strengthens desire by thinking about something which has pleased me, sensually or intellectually or a sunset or anything, by thinking about it, it has strengthened the nature of desire and has given it a continuity, and that continuity becomes pleasure. All our attitudes and values and demands are based on this search for comfort and pleasure. And is it possible for thought not to interfere? Now I see something very beautiful. And there is immediate sensation and a desire to touch it, to hold it, to own it, to possess it. Then thought comes in. And is it possible to look at something extraordinarily beautiful, man, woman, child, tree, a house, a picture, whatever it is, and merely observe without the interference of thought? And when thought interferes, there is a totally different kind of action, as when thought doesn't interfere with desire. You understand? I wonder, right? You understand? When thought interferes with desire, which becomes pleasure, then activity has a different meaning altogether. Action. And when thought doesn't interfere with desire, there is again a totally different action which is not time-binding. So all this is, we are inquiring, aren't we, into the nature or come upon that thing which we call love. And we are asking if that love is something not of the same energy as hate. We must bear that in mind, otherwise we will wander away from the central question. And to answer that question, really, one has to, hasn't one, to free the mind from desire and pleasure, to find out. Gentleman asks how. Is there a how? Is there a method? Listen to the questions. Is there a method to free the mind from pleasure? Huh? And the following of a method in order to achieve the result is again based on pleasure. No? So there is no how. There is only a state of listening. And when one listens so totally, this question is answered. You see, first of all, sir, how do you look at anything totally? You say it's not possible, and when you say it is not possible, you have already blocked yourself from finding out. So to find out, you have to look at your own mind, looking at your friend or somebody or at a tree, how you look at it. Why do we create an image of another and hold it? And is it not possible at the moment of experience to live it so completely, or so let it go through you so that no image remains, no mark remains? Please, these are all questions that are really have to be answered not by words, but by actual direct perception and discovery. And to find out anything new requires tremendous inquiry and meditation. You don't just get it by just coming to a meeting for an hour and thinking one has to work tremendously hard. You do work very hard to earn a livelihood, to go to office every day. But this requires much more alertness, much more careful examination. And one doesn't have the energy, the patience, or the interest, because this is non-profitable. It doesn't bring you any profit, financial or any other way.
Is the action of love the permanent escape of suffering?
Do we know what suffering is? Do you really know what suffering is? Only we know it when we remain with it, right? We don't remain with anything. Oh Lord, huh? Do we? We think about it. Let us take the question of suffering. Is it, first of all, is it possible to end it? Totally, without becoming hard, brutal, brittle, and all the rest of it. And to go to the very end of it and find out. Can we do that one thing this afternoon? Huh? Shall we? I suffer. Why do I suffer? And what is this nature of suffering? I suffer because I've lost my son, my mother, sister, or somebody doesn't love me, or I cannot fulfill, or I'm thwarted. I haven't got a good brain and somebody else has a good brain. And I know what it means to suffer. In suffering there is a great deal of self-pity. And suffering, I want to escape from it, because I don't know how to resolve it. And so I have a network of escapes. Now, can I stop from escaping? And it's very difficult because escaping is so subtle. I can escape by turning on the radio, a magazine, talking to somebody, and so on, so on. But the thing remains, and I don't want to get in touch with it. It's too painful, too agonizing. I push it away. So can I stop from escaping altogether and just look at it, live with it, know it? Not suppress it, not control it, not sublimate it, not do all that kind of idiotic stuff, but get to know it, live with it, go into it.
You say, be quiet. You do give an answer. And that, why just be quiet? Why not speak? Why not see? Why not hear? Why not do? Why not think?
So we went into that. We have thought a great deal about suffering. Volumes have been written by religious people and all the rest of it. And yet we suffer. Suffering apparently is a daily affair. And a man asks, is it possible to end it? And when it says, please tell me how to end it, then is that thinking? Is that examining? Or you're merely wanting a result which will be greatly pleasurable. When the suffering ends, obviously you think it'll be tremendous pleasure, there'll be great pleasure. So one follows the method in order to have that pleasure. But there is no understanding of suffering. And so, when there is no understanding of suffering, it comes in another form. So what we are trying to do is to find out for oneself whether it is possible to end this thing that we call suffering, in which is involved self-pity, loneliness, all that.
Is it necessary to suffer in order to understand suffering?
Is it necessary to suffer in order to understand? In order to understand. I think Christianity has made suffering into something holy. By suffering, we say we're going to, reach heaven. I think a mind that suffers is the most stupid mind. It doesn't end it. So please, sir, I'll come back. What is it we're asking about? What is we're all wanting to find out? What is the mind when it is not quiet? All right. Most of our minds are not quiet, are they? Ceaselessly agitated, active, thinking about something, or soliloquizing, talking to itself, imagining. It is endlessly restless, isn't it? And how do we know any quiet when a mind is so restless? And it may be the nature of the mind never to be quiet. And why are we so restless? Especially modern world. My tendency, my demand for a particular satisfaction has not been satisfied. And I'm always seeking something which will give me immense satisfaction, and I know there isn't any. So the restless mind may be the result of a neurological state, or restless because we haven't found an answer to anything. An answer in the deep sense of the word to fundamental issues. Therefore, it's nothing to do. It's like a leaf driven all over the place. And without understanding the nature of one's own thinking, which is self-knowing, quietness of the mind is not possible. And to know oneself is the beginning of wisdom. Not in a book, not in psychology, all that. Wisdom is in knowing oneself. It comes out of the soil of self-knowing.
Why do you think the negative aspect of a restless mind, the active mind that regards right now, the creative mind?
This has been the fifth of 8 programs presenting the talks of Krishnamurti. Subsequent programs in this series are titled Questioning, Living and Death, and The End of Conflict.
Again, this is a very difficult word, creative.
This is NET, the National Educational Television Network.